It's the Brad and John Show.
It is the Brad and John Show, and it is the Brad and John Show for Wednesday, November 27th. Did I get that right, John?
It is. You're exactly right, Brad.
And this is the A block, so this is the very beginning of the show for a Wednesday, which is going to be our last show of the week because tomorrow is Thanksgiving. And John and I have elected to take Friday off. Well, John's elected to take Friday off. For me, I do a show tomorrow and Friday morning, but that's just me, right? All right, John?
No, you would, Brad. You have, as we talked about in yesterday's B block, you have an unimpeachable work ethic.
I don't know about that. Anyway, John Combest puts together this website every single day. It's called johncombest.com, Combest, common spelling of John, John, and put a .com after his name, and you get his site. Every single day he goes through painstaking efforts to find out what he thinks are the top 20, 30, 40, sometimes even 50 biggest stories in the state of Missouri. Could be governance, could be all sorts of things, could be politics, could be weird stuff like Donald Trump coming to St. Louis to essentially take over the city of St. Louis and kick Mayor Tashara Jones out. Wouldn't that be interesting?
Yeah, I think he's planning that, along with the takeover of the state police that we'll hear about in story number 2.
well, John's tipping his hat. We bring in this guy, and hold on a minute, John. Don't go. I forgot to hit the. I keep forgetting this. I'm doing something different here because of this, some technical aspects. We bring in this guy.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he starts off with,
in third place,
some good news for guys in the Francis House School District who want to use women's locker rooms. You want to catch a little sneak peek there. You're a legal man of age. You're 18 years old. You want to use the facilities for females in the Francis House School District. The Francis House School District is not going to take a stance, Brad. They're not going to take a position on men and women's locker rooms for just a little while. Yes, this was the decision on Friday. Now, see, Brad, for context, you might remember that across the state in the Blue Springs School District, those folks were sued, and they lost a ruling for $4 million about a transgender wanting to use their adopted gender restroom, the restroom and locker room facilities. So this decision to protect women from men and their spaces, it cost the Blue Springs School District $4 million, Brad. And leaders at the Francis House School District, including folks who were pretty conservative, say, we're sorry, folks, but we got to wait until that Blue Springs case gets resolved. The state Supreme Court is going to look at that Blue Springs case in January, Brad. Now, uniquely, one of your favorite people who you've told stories about, Brad, from the Francis House School District, your friend Jane Pushkar, is not too happy about the decision to not move forward on this. But as you read this piece, which, by the way, is brought to us by Monica Obranovic from the Post-Dispatch, she makes it clear that Adam Bertrand and other conservatives say, look, our heart is in that position of protecting women's places, but it would be irresponsible for us to put this policy in place before that Blue Springs case is resolved. It would be fiscally irresponsible to us as stewards of taxpayer money. We can't put the district at risk right now. So that's as it stands, Brad. And I guess the long and short of it is the Francis House School District is going to wait, see what happens before they move forward.
Okay, let me ask you a question on the Blue Springs thing. Did the side that won, was that the transgender person who sued? Or
correct. Was it? Yeah, $4 million in damages, Brad. Like, I think $4 million is fair. If you don't get to use your preferred bathroom, I think $4 million is fair, don't you?
See, John, here's the crazy thing about this. Okay, and if you want to end this whole thing, this is Brad's guerrilla marketing tactic. Okay, you know what you do? Just like Donald Trump. Donald Trump made the comment, I can't remember, it's a couple years ago. By the way, have you heard his ad on radio for his watches? Have you heard this?
No, I haven't heard this. Have you heard it on good right-wing radio?
Yes, he's selling watches, which is funny. I'm going like, okay, our new president's on radio stations hawking watches, okay, which I think is sort of funny. Anyway, the Donald Trump thing, he said, and rightfully so, he said he could fix the whole thing with this transgender sports stuff. He would just go and buy a WNBA team, which I don't think would be all that expensive. They're worth more now that you got Caitlin Clark, who's, sort of brightened the future for the WNBA. But he would buy a WNBA team. and then fire all the women, and then just go and fire and get all the guys who are retiring from the NBA and all the guys who were high school and college basketball stars but couldn't make it into the WNBA or couldn't make it into the NBA, because there's a lot of guys. When you think all the different colleges that turn out these incredible collegiate basketball players, and then very few of them get picked up by the NBA because there's not a lot of space on the team. What do they have? Like the whole team's like 12, 13 players, something like that?
Not many, for sure.
Okay, so his deal was he would hire all these ex-NBA players and a bunch of college stars and say, okay, we're going to win every single game and we're going to win the championship. And they would. It wouldn't even be a challenge. And then people go, oh my God, look what he did. He would say, okay, now I ask you again, do you want men in the WNBA or not? And most people go, well, we get it. You know what I mean? It's just one of those kind of things. And
Brad, I don't know why you believe that students should be forced to use the facilities that match the gender on their birth certificate. But that's so antiquated, Brad.
But John, here's once again, this is Brad, the out of the box thinker, okay, the disruptor kind of guy. You know how if I were in school, if I were in Francis Howell, and I was a student, and I'm going like, okay, enough of this crap. It's just stupid. I would go to like gym class and say, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow when we show up for school, we're all just going to pick the girls' restroom, and we're just going to hang out there all day. We're just going to show up at, first period, and we're just going to sit in the women's restroom all day long. And when the women come, oh, sorry, can't come in. It's men's day. It's the women's restroom. And pretty soon people get the thing, okay, you guys are over the top. Yeah, we're over the top, but, you can't kick us out. Remember, you're the school board. You decided you're not going to do anything like this. So guess what? And then next week, we're going to take over 2 restrooms. And then the week after that, we're going to take over every women's restroom in the entire school. And then we'll see what you're going to do about it. What do you think, Johnny? What do you like my idea?
I think that is a much preferable option to a horrible incident that could happen, which would be at some point you have a man in the women's locker room and it terrifies a woman so bad that it causes her actual trauma. And, the word trauma is probably thrown about a little too frequently in today's society. But imagine coming out. Jane Pushkar mentioned this in the Post-Dispatch piece. Imagine being a female and walking out of your stall in the restroom. You have a limited time between classes, and there's a 6-foot-tall guy just standing there staring at you.
So she caught me is what she's saying?
She did catch you, yeah. And I mean, you were stooped a little bit low because, you got, over time with calcium and osteo. Now, thankfully, one of your sponsors, Brad, is OsteoStrong.
Yes.
So you have strong bones and strong muscles. You work out now a lot of times in the morning, allegedly. I think you and Jay Ashcroft are on the same workout plan. But yeah, Brad, you might not be 6 foot whatever you are anymore, but you're still 6 foot tall.
And by the way, John, when you get to be my age, 89, you complain about your illnesses. Last night I had another one of my gallbladder attacks, which I know you're going to want to.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, well, that's actually not funny. I'm sorry.
Can you know what's interesting about this is Armstrong and Getty are on vacation, so they're running best of. So yesterday I was in the office listening to Armstrong and Getty on the station, and Jack Getty recounted his gallbladder attack, and I have never been in so much pain. Well, there's 2 times when I've been in ultimate pain. And you're talking to a guy who's broken numerous bones, been in terrible car accidents and things like that. The 2 times when I've been in the most pain in my life was, number 1 was kidney stones, and I've had those 2 or 3 times. And number 2 was my gallbladder attack. Now, last night was not a super bad one, but it just sort of crept up in me all day long. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And the crazy thing about it is, once I take my meds, it goes away in like 20, 30 minutes now. Is that weird or what?
Are they daily meds, Brad, or do you only take it when you get some sort of attack or pain?
It's some kind of prescription strength Prilosec kind of stuff. It's like a acid reliever or something like that, But the problem with it is ultimately, if the attacks get more frequent, I'm going to have my gallbladder taken out, because that's exactly what Jack Getty said. And I know several people that have had the same situation. One person I know that got to the point where she had like 3 or 4 gallbladder attacks a week, and I'm telling you, it's miserable. I mean, you get this, it starts like an upper stomach and then moves into your chest. It's almost like you feel like you're having a heart attack. Then you go into these incredible sweats, incredible chills. You're like in so much pain. And then and to the point where I will be honest and tell you, a year ago I ended up in the hospital. 3 shots of morphine later, I still was in pain. Now, think about that for a minute. When you're in so much pain that the morphine doesn't really help, it just gets miserable. Okay, enough of me. Let's go to number 2.
Well,
Up a notch to number 2.
I'm sorry.
Brad, before we get into number 2, just build that story out. I know that you like to meet up with pickleball players at Harpo's. So make sure to build a little bit more drama into that narrative. I'm sure they would love to hear that story.
Right.
Are we good?
Because that's what they share. Matter of fact, remember one of the things that Jim White used to say, and no aches and pains. You weren't supposed to call, oh, Jim, my leg's hurting me so much. That kind of stuff. Okay.
I talked over your number 2 intro, and I'm sorry for that, Brad. But our number 2 story today comes from the great Jason Rosenbaum. And as part of his Politically Speaking podcast, Jason's a bit of a cultural anthropologist, Brad. He went out and he found one of the rarest of species in St. Louis City. He found a straight white male Democrat. Can you believe that, Brad?
How's that possible? Where was that? Under a rock somewhere?
Yeah, he went to a rock in the southwest part of the state, which I'm guessing, and let's be fair, like if you were looking to live in a the most white area, I guess you could say, of St. Louis City, it'd be fair to say that it would be the southwest part of the city, right, Brad?
Yeah, my son lives in.
I mean, you're more up on this than I am, but where would it be?
Well, I don't know. My son lives in South City, just north of River de Pere, and it's an interesting neighborhood. Actually, quite honestly, a very nice neighborhood. When he first moved down, I go, I don't know about this, but nice neighborhood. I don't really know, to tell you, John. I mean, there's areas of the city. You still have the Holly Hills area, which are very, very nice, and then you have where my parents grew up, which is, I think I told you this story years ago.
And were they in Walnut Park?
No, they were near Fairgrounds Park off of West Florissant. Well, years ago, I took my son one of the football games, and we went back through my parents' old neighborhood, and my son literally says to me, Dad, can we get out of here?
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, that's the reality of the city today. So Rosenbaum describes this area, and they do a good job on the podcast of walking down exactly where the geographic lines are. But I should do a proper introduction. The gentleman's name is Nick Kimble, and he's a Democrat state rep. Uniquely, Brad, Nick Kimble did not have a primary. The current state representative is a woman named Donna Behringer, and she had been termed out. There's some white gals that have had that seat before. There was a woman named Michelle Kratke who had that seat before. I believe Kratke had that seat, and then Donna Behringer. So that area elects, solid, pretty moderate white Democrats. But one of the key pieces of this was that Rosenbaum asked him about state control of city police. And, this has been a big issue for incoming Governor Mike Kehoe. And Nick Kimble gave a great answer, which is, I'm not sure. We're going to have to see what the legislation looks like. What I thought was an interesting nugget from the interview is that Nick Kimble points out that his mom was a St. Louis City cop for 32 years. Wow. I didn't get in there whether she's retired now or not, or if she's still on the force. But his mom was a city cop for 32 years. So, Brad, this appears to be in the mold of a pretty moderate Democrat, that's represented those areas for a while. Rosenbaum also points out that Donna Behringer used to say that her district had the highest concentration of Republicans in the city, which I guess that makes sense. Like if you have a pretty reasonable area to live in, there are probably going to be more Republicans there than elsewhere. So a good non-committal answer from Nick Kimble on this. If I'm Nick Kimble, I don't give answers on stuff like this until I actually see the legislation, until I'm a member of the state legislature. Let's get through the holidays, and then we'll start answering policy questions. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, Donna Behringer, she's been on Mark Reardon's show quite a bit. Isn't she one of the roundtable guests that's been on there quite a bit? You know about this.
She is, yeah. She was an alderwoman in the city for quite a while, and yeah, I mean, she's generally pretty well liked. And Rosenbaum notes that Donna Behringer has had some success in working with Republicans. Brandon, the link that I have up today, a lot of times I like to link to the Apple podcast version of Rosenbaum's podcast and such, because when I link to that, then you can read the transcript. If you don't want to sit through an entire interview, You can essentially just scroll through the transcript. It's not perfect. You miss a little bit of context clues and whatever. But for folks who want to read the transcript, that's what I did for this interview.
Well, an interesting aspect of this is that obviously Mike Parson was a sheriff and was in law enforcement for a long time, but Mike Kehoe has very close ties with law enforcement. You know how that is, John? Connect the dots.
How is that?
This is the 6 degrees of separation. This is Kevin Bacon game. He worked for Dave Sinclair, and guess what Dave Sinclair used to be before he was a cop?
He was a cop.
He was a city cop, and he had a lot of retired city police that worked at the various dealerships and things like that. So I would imagine that Mike Kehoe has spent a good period of his time when he was in the employ of Dave Sinclair rubbing shoulders with ex-cops. And you know how it is. They get together and they talk, and, they tell the problems. And Mike Kehoe's probably thinking, okay, I'm going to straighten this mess out in St. Louis. Don't you think?
I think that for every item, you should bring up a health malady for old men. And at some point, you should retell your Dave Sinclair prostate story. And how happy you were that the chick that worked at Dave Sinclair's office had really cute, skinny little fingers.
That's not how they do the prostate check. It's a blood.
Isn't that what it was, Brad?
No,
you walked in and you said, I want the cutest girl with the skinniest fingers.
No, it's a blood test.
Hey, speaking of intercoursing, let's get to story number 1.
I don't know if we were, but here we go.
The number 1.
A familiar name in Missouri politics is back, Brad, and is back on a national scale. Forget about Missouri politics. We're talking about national stuff, and we're talking about the Trump administration. That's right, Brad. We might see the return of Eric Greitens. Have you caught wind of any of this, Brad?
No, what's the deal with Eric Greitens?
Well, I first heard this story yesterday on Scott Fawn's midweek update because a big national story was broken by CBS News. I guess it was on Monday, Brad, and I missed it on Monday. We didn't even talk about it yesterday. But here's the internecine, here's the inter-party squabble going on. A lot of people close to Donald Trump are looking for appointments, right? And there's always a controversy, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, of is someone peddling influence? Is someone trying to use their position as a member of the transition team to try to, get a little cash out of somebody? Well, according to a couple articles that I have up today, one from CBS and one from the Daily Mail in the UK, Eric Greitens has been looking for an appointment to be Secretary of the Navy.
Really?
So he had a conversation with a member of the transition team, a guy named Boris, and we'll be real careful here, Brad, Epshteyn. So it looks like Epstein, but it's more Epstein, Boris Epstein. And apparently, to cut to the chase, Brad, Eric Greitens had a conversation with this guy, and Eric didn't like the feeling of it. He didn't like how he felt. And Eric has told people that he felt, quote, a sense of unease and pressure from Epstein, almost as if Epstein was shaking him down. Now, according to what has happened in the last 48 hours, it appears as though Trump has no concerns about this Epstein guy. In fact, he praised Epstein. And Epstein was the guy, by the way, that put together Trump's legal team. So Trump obviously has a lot of faith and trust in this Epstein guy. And anyway, Eric Greitens also added the line that he's just looking out for the president. He only wants to, quote, protect the president, Brad. Eric Greitens is looking out for Donald Trump's best interest. I think we could all take that at face value.
No.
Anyway, it's great to see a Missouri figure. We've seen Eric Schmidt in the conversation. We've seen Andrew Bailey in the conversation. But what about Eric Greitens?
Well,
I think he'd be great as Secretary of the Navy, don't you, Brad?
Oh yeah, I do. But he'd get the village people back together and in the Navy. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I mean, I always thought of Eric Greitens as more of a rear admiral.
No, that's if you listen to Jesse Kelly's show on another station, shall we say. And I always hate when they do that. I'll be honest, it was on the Patriot 104.9. That's what Jesse Kelly calls Pete Buttigieg, Rear Admiral.
Oh, the Rear Admiral.
The Rear Admiral. Okay. Now, you talked about Andrew Bailey. Just yesterday, I read something that he's under consideration for the head of the FBI. Did you hear this?
I didn't see the FBI talk. I saw that after Gates went down, people were still talking about Bailey. but I didn't see it was for FBI.
Yeah, I saw that yesterday. I'll see if I can find that and send that to you. But
I'll look that up on commercial.
Okay, we're going to take a break. And by the way, this is the BJ Show. You can check out our podcast at bjshow.co, or you can actually listen to the same thing, but it's in a different format. It's on video at bjshow.video, and John does an excellent job of chopping up the show and putting all the proper timings in and the chapters and all that kind of stuff. And yesterday he had a field day with Block C, which normally he doesn't touch, but he had a lot of fun yesterday with Block C, didn't you, John?
You're 2 for 2 on hot phone calls, Brad. You're on a Cal Ripken like streak here.
Yeah, that's pretty scary.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?